one element which is essential to hold a network together is practice. So it means, actually there are two elements. One is depth and the other one is practice. Depth meaning going deeper into some topics or situations so that we can actually create shared knowledge or shared understanding as a group of what it means to, I don't know, what exactly are the complexities today. And that creates shared understanding, shared vocabulary, knowledge that we know you have, I have, she has, that is common. And then practice, that means getting together on a regular basis and spending time together.
So this is a very unique conference because I went to a lot of scientific conferences where I always felt that I met books rather than people or technical terms. But this is a gathering, I must say, not even a conference, because the word conference already has some very formal sense to it. This gathering has a spirit of looking into the other human. So when I look at people here, I look at them as like a living, breathing humans, and I know that there are hearts pumping in them.
I feel that the experience of being here for the last 24 hours, just over, has been a real an awareness of no matter what the intentional commitment is of the group, there is always, what we experienced today was a conversation in the basement, but there is a basement of ourselves. And no matter who we are or where we live, there is always going to be diversity and tension between that diversity of a misunderstanding or a misinterpretation of language. And language can be a barrier, and it can also be a connector. And I think what we are experiencing is we've all come here with a very similar intent and shared values, and even in the face of that, how complex transformation is.
The tensions that are moving in me are the ones that made me coming here. That is the question on how to reconciliate or how to put together the values I try to embody and live, and the world where I live, which is a world of big institutions, public administration, which is a rigid administration and not prone to change. And the tension between what the mandate and the task says and what we actually are able then to do is big. There's a big gap, so there is a lot of frustration. Staff in my team is very motivated, very professional, very well intentioned, but we do not have the resources and the support needed to help going through the transformations. And coming here and meeting many more other people that are much more experienced than me into transformations and are also experiencing the same difficulties in their own context, makes me feel less alone and more able to resort to others in case of need. So we are tissuing a network of connections that can be a resource, you see. So on the one hand, I find a playground where I can speak what I face, the challenges I face, and talk about it with other people that understand without too much explanation, so like-minded. And at the same time, I can build a network of support and exchange. So here it's a place where it is a resource by itself, by its own existence for me. Mm-hmm.
And so my experience of working for many years in this area is that we can catalyse transformation, but we can't do transformation. And that means that, like the chemical reactor, we can have a huge impact and influence on the environments we are operating in, whether it be a community, a family, or an organisation. And for me, the tensions arise in myself when I have the experience of not being witnessed, not being valued, not being respected. And I've come to see that the deepest of our human emotions that we react to is being humiliated. And in the worst instances, that produces war.
Maybe there is a relief, like after speaking about it, but there is no real relief. They will come up again until we found a way to transform it. And I think transformation happens with deep listening. And the deep listening has to be cultivated. It's an art. It cannot just come randomly.
Kind of becoming more hopeful here now. Also, with this morning I did the cacao ceremony with Stella, and somehow there's an integration process happening inside me. I think of like this disbelief, but then like hope, and okay, and what's my responsibility to also create that and advocate for it, and model also like the qualities that I seek to have in society. And that's a spiritual practice, because there's the acceptance piece, and there's also at the same time the activism of day-to-day life.
For me, what I mean by a spiritual practice is a practice that does not let me drown in despair or suffering right away, but to be able to float on it and go to the other shore and not be overwhelmed by it. And then I feel that without the spiritual practice, it's like a stone that is dropped into the river. The stone is not powerful enough to stay afloat, but if we build a boat and then you put thousands of kilos of stones on it, the boat can transfer it to the other shore. So for me, this boat is very important, and the spiritual practice for me is that sort of a boat that does not let me sink into despair, but at the same time not ignore it, not at the same time go into a cocoon of spiritual silence and just ignore the world and say, oh, okay, that's not my suffering, I'm safe here and all is going well. So for me, this is a spiritual practice to be present to both of them, suffering and happiness.
We often feel the tension is something we want to avoid, not talk about, put in the basement, tuck it away so no one sees. But I think that's the richness of these conversations, is that we can be held in a safe space to let ourselves feel these tensions and transform them. And my own practice is many, many practices, whether it's moving things through my body and exercising every morning, meditation, breath work. So I have many to call on, because I work through many different environments, from corporate to social activism and activists. So I think it's critical we have our spiritual practices, and I see it as the only thing that will create a transformation.
I have a daily practice that I share with my husband that has sustained us for 30 years. That is every day at every meal before we start eating, we say for what we are thankful, grateful. And it can be, small things.
What comes up is the quality of attunement. Which requires slowing down, and I think it's not something thinking about the hospital example. It's not something that they can afford. They cannot afford slowing down. There are emergencies, and there's the pace of society, which is always like in an emergency state, and the qualities of attunement and deep listening, they require us to relax our nervous systems, and it's breathe, and it's not about fighting or freezing or flying responses. It's a different kind of response.
Doesn't matter how many we are, it matters the quality of our relationships. And here I see the same potential. So if I understand well, AMA is, or the concept of it is 10 years old. That's what we celebrated yesterday with the storytelling in the garden with the line. Yes, for how long we've been in touch with either Valerie or Thomas, or so it's already a long story. And to go forward, there needs to be how can I say, a recurrent coming back to each other, in my view.